I'm here with Kathleen Stewart, a PhD student who studies clinical psychology at Ryerson. She focuses on fear and anxiety. Thank you so much for being here today, Kathleen.
Thanks for having me.
So today's Halloween. People are in the mood to dress up, to go out, to have fun. So psychologically, why do some people like to be afraid?
It's a really good question. So we don't actually have a ton of research on why people like to be afraid. Most of the research we do is on people who kind of don't want to be afraid, but we do have kind of an understanding of why that might be. And part of that is the physical response of anxiety. So that fight, flight, or freeze response that we experience. When we have those sensations, so racing heart, increased blood pressure, that feeling of adrenaline, if we're in a situation that's actually pretty safe and pretty controllable, so like watching a scary movie, going to a haunted house where nothing bad is like really gonna happen, those sensations can actually be kind of almost exciting and thrilling. Also, the other part of that is the relief, so the come down from those kind of really like anxiety-provoking scenarios can also be really reinforcing. So that feeling of coming down from feeling anxious, we think might kind of lead to people enjoying that experience, if that makes sense.
So what you're saying is it's not the feeling of fear, but the feeling of relaxation or ease that comes after?
Yeah, I mean, it could be both. So some people actually enjoy being scared. So for example, if you're on a roller coaster and you have that really intense rush of adrenaline, some people find that very pleasurable because they know that nothing bad is gonna happen. If you were to be in a situation where you were actually in danger, like if someone was chasing you down the street, you would probably not be enjoying how that felt. But in a situation that's controllable, that's predictable, where you know nothing bad is going to happen, those physical sensations of anxiety can be kind of fun and kind of exciting. And then coupled with this like come down afterwards, that feeling of relief, maybe a feeling of accomplishment, like I just did something really scary, can be really reinforcing.
Right.
If that makes sense.
And on the flip side of that, like some people hate going to haunted houses, they hate everything to do with Halloween. So why do some people hate being afraid?
Yeah, so this is more what I study. So in this case, you know, there's a few things that might be at play. So one thing is there's this personality trait called intolerance of uncertainty that I think would probably, I'm speculating, be involved. So some people really don't like uncertainty. They hate not knowing what's going to happen. And as you can imagine, if you're going in a haunted house or you're watching a scary movie, there's a lot of uncertainty. People are like jumping out from behind things. So people who really hate uncertainty are probably, I would guess, going to be the kind of people that don't like to go to scary, you know, haunted houses, etc. Also, some people are really sensitive to anxiety. They really don't like the feeling of their heart racing. They hate the sensations of anxiety. They get really scared about being scared. And I would imagine also those people would be the kind of people that do not want to feel anxious, if that makes sense.
Right. So why do some people freeze up when they get afraid?
Great question. So we used to call it fight or flight, and then we kind of realized somewhere down the line that another really common response is actually to freeze. So when people are in a scary situation, those tend to be the three things we see. Either they get aggressive and they fight, or they run, or they actually freeze. And the reason for that is that it can be adaptive in some situations to actually do nothing. So sometimes it's actually better to just be almost like immobile as opposed to fight or run if those aren't possibilities.
Right. And so when you are afraid, what's happening to you at a neurological level?
Yeah, so a lot is happening. So we have chemicals in our body that are released when we are anxious. So that's responsible for all of those changes. So the heart rate, the blood pressure, it's quite amazing actually. And then we also have this complementary system after we're out of that situation that brings us back down. So even if we feel really anxious in the moment, it can't last forever. Those changes are kind of temporary, and they always come back down.
Right. So say you're somebody who's easily anxious and they easily get afraid, but say they were invited out to a Halloween party and then they're out and about on Halloween. So what are some tips or tricks that they could do to calm down in the moment when they are feeling afraid?
Totally. one of the most like kind of tried and true techniques that sounds sometimes almost too simple is deep breathing. It actually is very effective because when we're anxious, we start to inhale a lot, we start to hyperventilate. And if you actually slow your breathing down, it can be really effective to slow down that physiological anxiety. Same with what we call progressive muscle relaxation, where you go through different parts of your body, squeezing and tensing and then relaxing. So you're kind of like inducing a bit of relaxation. So you could go to the bathroom and do some deep breathing. Another thing is really to kind of remind yourself about, is there anything really bad that can happen in this situation? Am I actually at risk? You know, if you're at a Halloween party and you don't like kind of scary things, am I really in danger? Is anything really bad going to happen in this haunted house? And kind of doing a little bit of talking back to the anxiety.
Mm-hmm. So trying to rationalize what's going on with you.
Yeah, a lot of when we're anxious, our mind is telling us that like really, really bad things are going to happen. And again, it sounds simple, but actually talking back to that and saying, okay, what's the evidence that something really bad is going to happen to me in this haunted house? You know, would this place be licensed, for example, if there was something really bad that's going to happen? What's the worst thing that could happen? And kind of asking yourself those questions to really try to bring down some of that anxiety that might be telling you this is a very, very scary situation.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today, Kathleen.
Yeah, thanks for having me.